Hey art nerds! Today we are taking a look at the Sennelier La Petite Aquarelle watercolor set. This is a student grade watercolor set that comes in a plastic travel case and has an elasticized strap that should make it easy for plein air sketching. The back of the box says, watercolor travel box containing 24 half pans. La Petite Aquarelle is a delicate, colorful, fine quality watercolor manufactured in France. La Petite Aquarelle is perfect both for artists who are just starting out or learning how to paint, and also for painting outdoors. And I borrowed this watercolor set from my friend Allie. So thank you Allie so much for letting me borrow this set. And it would mean a lot to me if you guys would check out her Instagram down in the description below. So this isn't really a proper unboxing swatch since this is a used product, but without Allie allowing me to borrow the set, we wouldn't have this review at all. So I really am grateful. Inside the cardboard box is a fairly sturdy plastic box. The packaging has a cardboard box exterior. Interior plastic container seems really nice. There's front embossment, which is well done. The body is matte plastic, snaps closed with little latches, which might wear out over time. The elastic strap on the back is wide, sturdy, and comfortable. So since this is a used set, some aspects of this review may be inaccurate or not quite complete. This review, again, would not be possible without Allie's generosity, and it would not be possible without the support of my wonderful art nerds over on Patreon. So if you guys like what I do, you want to help me continue to do it, help offset the cost of reviews like this one, because even though we do get a chance to check out the product since we borrowed it without having to purchase it, it does utilize consumables such as paper and brushes. So your support over on Patreon would really mean a lot to me. So the La Petite Aquarelle is kind of the little sister product to the Sennelier La Aquarelle, and I am going to be comparing it to the La Aquarelle later on in this review. And I have a full review of Sennelier La Aquarelle here on this channel, as well as a wonderful field test. The interior of the box is smooth white plastic, similar to what Magello uses. There's lots of mixing space inside. And there's also a lot of unused space in the interior, but no room to actually expand. And this was a problem I had with the Van Gogh student set as well. The half pans are not individual, and they're part of the molding. So you can't really replace them with half pans of your preference. And Sennelier does not sell open stock half pans for the La Petite Aquarelle set. Now you could refill them with the professional grade Sennelier La Aquarelle. That is an option. But I do like to see sets that are a little bit more geared to long-term usability. Now, La Petite Aquarelle is the little sister of La Aquarelle, the Sennelier professional watercolor range, and is a colorful, fine watercolor manufactured in France. The pigments have been specifically selected for their miscibility, and the binding agent is reinforced with glycerin and has been produced to allow a smoother application of the color onto the paper. This formulation of La Petite Aquarelle is designed to make it easier to produce mixtures and washes, and is perfect for artists who are learning how to master watercolor, as well as those painting outdoor. And this is from the Sennelier site. They don't really have a lot of information about these watercolors. Lots of information about their oils and about their professional watercolors and about their watercolor accessories, but not so much about the La Petite Aquarelle. And this site doesn't disclose what the binding agent is. Now, Sennelier Professional uses honey, and honey is hydrophilic, which means it loves water. It's going to absorb water from the atmosphere, and it also means it's going to activate very quickly. Now, with their professional line, they're very quick to disclose that they're using honey as a binder. And I get the feeling that perhaps the binder is not honey-based. Otherwise, wouldn't they say it was honey-based? And they do add glycerin for smoother application. And you guys might know from some of my children's watercolor videos, I'm not really a big fan of glycerin in my watercolors. I find that it changes the handling properties. So the colors in this set are 116 titanium white, 501 lemon yellow, 574 primary yellow, 579 Sennelier yellow, 645 orange, 641 orange Sennelier, 695 primary red, 690 rose permanent, 913 cobalt violet hue, 315 ultramarine, 307 cobalt blue hue, 341 phthalo turquoise, 326 primary blue, 807 deep green, 805 green yellow, 899 olive green, 525 252 yellow ochre, 205 raw umber, 211 burnt sienna, 263 Venetian red, 202 burnt umber, 703 Payne's gray, and 755 ivory black. And like we said, this is a 24 color half pan set. I also want to point out to you guys that down in the description below, I'm going to have a transcript of this video if you guys have trouble following along with what I have to say, or if you just prefer to read your content. There is a transcript down in the description, as well as outside links. I'm going to have links where you can purchase these if you're so interested. I do want to let you guys know that if it is an Amazon link, I do see a small Amazon affiliate bounty. You guys don't pay that, but that is another way to help support this channel. So next up, we're going to be doing our swatch testing. We're going to be doing this on Arches cold press cotton rag watercolor paper. This is a fairly pricey paper for something like swatches, so I just want to remind you guys that if you enjoy what I do, if you find it helpful, useful, and informative, you guys should consider joining me over on Patreon at patreon.com/natosoup to help support the work that we're doing here on this channel. And here is the wonderful, beautifully lettered, I mean, Allie's hand lettering is so nice, beautifully lettered swatch card that Allie loaned me along with this set to give you guys kind of an idea of the colors that we're going to be working with today. So for our swatch test, I'm going to apply a little bit of Copic alcohol marker to the paper, and this is going to give us an idea of the opacity of these markers without creating a resist. And we're working on the nicest paper, maybe not the nicest ever paper, but we're working on a really nice cotton rag paper because we want to give these watercolors the best chance to impress possible. We want to be as fair as possible. So I'm pre-activating all of my half pans with a little bit of clean water, and I'm working with a silver black velvet brush today. This is one of my favorite watercolor brushes. I use these all the time. So the Sennelier La Petite Aquarelle is available in 3 different types of sets: the 12-piece tube set, the 12-piece half pan set, and then the 24-piece half pan set that we're looking at today. There is also a set of 16 that comes in a black wooden box. So the prices for these are: the 24 half pan set is $35.59 on Jerry's. The 12-piece set is $32.83. The 12-piece half pan set is $19.41, and the gift set is $40.12, and that's all on Jerry's Artorama. On Amazon, the 24-piece half pan set is $29.79 with Prime shipping, and then on Blick, the 24-piece set is $31.57. The half pan 12-piece set is $17.22, and then the tube set is $29.12. So before swatching, I noticed that the mass tone of these watercolors is fairly bright, which suggests there may be a lot of optical brighteners used in this set. These also look like they're very soft, but I think they may have been extruded based on the least used pans and the photo on the cover. You get a lot of yellows and greens in this set with only one real red and a cobalt violet hue rather than a dioxine purple. Lemon yellow and primary yellow are so similar, one could have excluded one to include another red or purple. Now, while swatching these, I noticed that the colors all activate quickly, but the titanium wet white is really very weak. The water muddied really fast just from the swatches, and I'm going to switch it out at the halfway mark, so I switched it out around here. And although these do get soupy, they don't become more saturated or overly gloopy. And some colors are really weak. Burnt sienna, cobalt blue lake, deep green, and burnt umber are all examples of really weak colors in the set. And both swatch passes, the sets of 12, really muddy the water. So over the past couple years, I've really reviewed a lot of different watercolor sets, mainly focusing on professional grade watercolors because I've been looking for something to kind of augment my daily driver set for when I paint my comic 7-inch Cara. I've been avoiding student grade watercolors, or at least purchasing student grade watercolors for a while because they tend to just not perform as well as I would like. However, I am definitely curious about them and I get asked about them frequently. So I'm really grateful to Allie for allowing me to borrow this set to review today. Allie has since upgraded, so I was able to keep this set for a little while, and I'm going to have a field test where we put these to the test coming up really soon. So next we're going to be comparing these to my Sennelier test set. This test set was sent to me as a birthday present by my friend Kabocha, so thank you so much, Kabocha. And I'm going ahead and I'm marking the colors that they have in common. And with my L'Aquarelle swatches, the colors are very bright. There's a lot of very bright colors, but they're not particularly saturated. So I'm using homemade half pans created during my Sennelier L'Aquarelle Unbox and Swatch. When a perfect match was not available, I selected the closest matches, and I swatched the L'Aquarelle first, then the La Petite Aquarelle for side-by-side comparison. And I noticed that while wet, the La Petite Aquarelle colors look much brighter than the L'Aquarelle colors. Exact matches in terms of color names were lemon yellow and Payne's gray. Close matches were bright red, L'Aquarelle, and primary red, La Petite Aquarelle. Ultramarine deep, L'Aquarelle, and ultramarine, La Petite Aquarelle. And then non-matches were Chinese orange, L'Aquarelle, versus orange, La Petite Aquarelle, and burnt sienna, La Petite Aquarelle. Sennelier says their pro line has twice as much pigment as the student line, and I have a link to that in the description below. So if we can assume color numbers mean color matches, as both systems have color numbers, these are the pigments that would be in the Petite Aquarelle set, since those are not listed. Color names vary from line to line, but color numbers seem consistent, and the professional name is denoted when it differs from the student name. And you guys are going to be able to find a list of that down in the description below, but I'll go over them with you guys. So for titanium white, we think it is PW6. For lemon yellow, we think it is PY3. For primary yellow, we think it is PY74. For Sennelier yellow, which is Sennelier Yellow Deep in L'Aquarelle, we think it's PY83, PY153. For orange, which we think is Chinese orange, it is PY150, PY209, PBR23. For orange Sennelier, PO73. For primary red, which in the professional set is alizarin crimson lake, it is PR83. For rose permanent, which is rose madder lake in L'Aquarelle, it is PV19. For cobalt violet hue, which is cobalt violet deep hue, we think it is PR122, PV16. For ultramarine, which is ultramarine deep, it is PB29. For cobalt blue hue, we think it may be PB28, and this may be the genuine pigment in the professional line, but we think it's probably a hue in the student line. For phthalo turquoise, which is phthalocyanine turquoise, it's PB15 to a ratio of 3, PG7. For primary blue, which is phthalocyanine blue, it's PB15 to a ratio of 3. For deep green, which is phthalo green deep, we think it is PB15 to a ratio of 3, PG7. For green yellow, which is phthalo green light, PG7, PY153. And you guys see I'm doing a lift test right now. We're just testing the liftability of these watercolors. So continuing with our pigment talk. For forest green, we think it is PBR7, PY42. For olive green, we think it is PY150, PG26, PBR23. For yellow ochre, we think it is PY43. For raw umber, we think it is PBR7. For burnt sienna, we think it is PBR7 as well. For Venetian red, it is not listed under the professional line of watercolors. For burnt umber, we think it is PBR7. For Payne's gray, we think it is PV19, PB15 to a ratio of 1, and PBK7. And for ivory black, we think it is PBK9. So with the lift test, colors in both lines were fairly liftable with a bit of scrubbing. Sennelier L'Aquarelle is more prone to staining the paper, and I used a Cotman synthetic brush for this lift test. So next, we're going to do a little bit of color mixing by creating some color wheels. And for that, I'm just going to use a red, a yellow, and a blue rather than a warm red, a cool red, a warm blue, a cool blue, a warm yellow, a cool yellow, like I normally would. And this is based on the limitations in size to the colors that I have in their professional line. So I'm just going ahead and marking the colors that I want to use for easy reference. And I'm going to use primary red, primary yellow, and ultramarine from the La Petite Aquarelle set. And I think it's really obvious when doing color mixing that the Petite palette doesn't have as much pigment as the L'Aquarelle. These colors are fairly muted, fairly desaturated, even though we've used a lot of water. And the day I was painting this was incredibly nasty outside. These paints stay wet for a really long time, so they probably are using a hydrophilic binder like honey. You should probably keep this in mind when doing plein air watercolor, as your paints will be prone to running out of their pans if carried vertically. So next, I'm going to be swatching the colors using the professional grade. So we have ultramarine deep, I think we have Sennelier red, and I think we have Sennelier yellow in this set. And you guys can see just how much more pigment is in these paints, how much more color you get from these paints. Now, of course, being professional grade, they are more expensive, they are going to cost more, but I do think the performance is worth it. And as you guys can see from the Sennelier test set, field test watercolor illustration, you can do a lot of mixing with these colors. So, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I am definitely going to be putting the Sennelier La Petite Aquarelle test to the Natto Soup field test. So I hope you guys will keep an eye out for that. If you like what I do, why don't you consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification so YouTube will let you know when that video has come out. And if you guys have any questions, I highly recommend you check the description first, since I am posting a transcript there, and then let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to get nerdy and talk about watercolors one-on-one, I have a Discord server that's just for you. It's called the Paint Box, and we get nerdy about art supplies, comics, and art every single day. I'm going to post a link to that down in the description below. You guys are very much welcome to join, share your art with us, and share your experience with us. So these took a while to dry, but now I'm going to be doing layer testing, and I just want to see how well these visibly mix, how well these layer, if I have any problems with lifting or reactivating. And they layer decently well, and I don't really have any problems with layer or reactivating. Now, I did this test on Fluid 100 watercolor paper. This is a less expensive cotton rag based, the buzzing of the phone distracted me, cotton rag based watercolor paper, and it just happened to be fairly around the right size that I needed for this particular test. So we do get some muddiness with the colors, but not a whole lot of reactivation. Again, I was doing this test on a really damp day, so I kind of expected some reactivation with this. Next, we're going to do the same layering with the Sennelier Professional line. Now, these colors are so much more intense, so much more pigmented, it is going to be a little bit more difficult to see good color mixes, but I will vouch for these based on my experiences using them regularly and using them in my field test, that these are very, very mixable, and you're going to get a wide range of colors from these from a very limited palette. So you don't need a lot of the Sennelier Professional watercolors to really achieve what you're looking for. Alright guys, it is time for our verdict, or as much of a verdict as we can give without having done the field test yet. You guys probably know I am not a huge fan of student grade watercolors. I feel like in the US, the price point is generally close enough to the professional line that I think it's worth the extra money to get the better product. I'm not a fan of using optical brighteners, and I'm not a fan of the lower pigment loads found in student grade watercolors. Now, I have done some head-to-head comparisons, like with Cotman and Reeves, and I'm really excited to have had the opportunity to do a head-to-head comparison with Sennelier. I'm going into this with a bit of a bias. I love Sennelier watercolors. I love the quality of their professional line, and they're part of my daily driver watercolor palette, but I dislike the price point versus quality of the student grade line in the US. And I will caveat, Sennelier tubes of watercolor are fairly pricey. They're around $10 and up depending on where you buy them. But I can fill a half pan and allow it to dry multiple times from a full-size tube of Sennelier. Now you can get the test set with the little 5mm tubes. Those will give you about 3 fills of a half pan. Or you can get the 10mm tubes open stock, which are going to give you at least 6 fills, if not more. So I think if you're willing to make the investment, if you're already looking for good watercolors, you're ready to do this more seriously and you don't mind spending more money, I personally would recommend spending that money. However, if you see the La Petite Aquarelle set at a really, really good price, you have a good coupon for it, and you might be buying for someone younger, this could be a really great set for a younger artist. I'm going to do a field test to really put this palette through its paces and see how it handles in a real-world painting situation, because all the swatches are telling me is that the pigment load is a little low on some colors, particularly that burnt sienna. That was driving me bonkers. I want to go way, way, way back and talk about pigments and color matching. When I was deciphering which pigments might be used in the student line, and you need to take that with a grain of salt because a lot of these are hues in the student line and the professional line is using the genuine pigments. So some of those pigment information might not be completely accurate, but since there isn't good pigment information for the student grade set, and Sennelier is not great about answering questions about the student grade set, we're going to go with what we can find. Anyway, color names changed a lot, as you guys saw. So I went by the color number instead, and generally those seem to optically be perfect matches in terms of like the swatch is like, yeah, that looks like a primary yellow. Must be a primary yellow. So that's kind of where I was coming from with that. I think the case is really nice, really sturdy. I do wish we had the option to pop out the half pans and put our own preferred half pans in it. You guys can see the little 5mm tubes versus the larger 10mm tube. I don't know where you can get the 5mm tubes open stock, but I can find the 10mm tubes at any fine art store. So Plaza, maybe not Jerry's, Blick, David's Art Supply in Louisiana. And with many art supply stores, you can request products by name and they'll get a hold of them for you. So if you have a favorite local art supply store, they may be able to work something like that out for you. So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I just generally am not into student grade watercolors. I do understand their place, but I think in the American art supply market, they're a little bit expensive for what they have to offer. My recommendation is almost always get a smaller set of professional grade tubes, learn some color mixing, and augment as you go. So you can see with the La Petite Aquarelle set, there's plenty of room for brushes. Honestly, if they had utilized their space a little bit better, there would have been plenty of room for lots of brushes. They could have even had room for maybe little water pots. I know Cotman has all kinds of interesting field sets available, and those have individual pans that you can pry out and replace, or you can just pry out all the pans and use them with your preferred watercolors. So I would like to see Sennelier consider offering something that's a little bit more sustainable in that line. So I hope you guys found this review helpful, useful, and informative. I hope you found this comparison helpful. There will be a transcript in the description below. Not everything, since I do ad-lib a lot, but you'll definitely find prices, pigments, and all most important points. If you guys like what I do, please consider subscribing. Join me here on Natto Soup Studio, and I'll see you guys again really soon. Have a great day, guys. Bye!